Is it?
Tom.
Cool.
Hi guys, if anybody's watching so far, if you could just tell us if sound's working. This is just something new we're trying today. We're just trying, what we're trying, Michael? We're trying live.
Yeah, so sometimes when Alan comes in to do some videos, we haven't got much time because either I've got a course booked or I need to be involved with something else. So today's an example of that. And one of the things that we found worked the other day quite well is that when we did the live the other day, it was the pipe bending one. It didn't take half as much time to get a video out. So we just decided to give it, well, try and push it again today and see if we can do something a bit different. I'm sure that we'll have a few bumps along the way. We're not quite sure if this is going to be something we're going to continue doing, but you know, we just thought let's have a bit of an open forum. Let's discuss a few topics that have come up on Gas Chat over the last few days.
Just pull that.
And then yeah, we'll
Just ask if sound's okay.
Is the sound okay? I think you won't be able to see that, Alan, but you'll be able to have a look and see if that's yeah, there's guys just said yes there.
So what we're going to do in this video really, we're just going to talk, we're just going to talk really. We're just going to chat about gas, we're going to chat about air source heat pumps. I'm having a new air source heat pump fitted tomorrow at my house. Me and Michael are fitting it at my house tomorrow. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about things that we've done wrong. Michael is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that as well. We'll also answer any questions. So if anybody's got any questions, please put them in comments. I've got my laptop here, so I'm going to we'll try and answer any questions that you want. Also, if you've got any future videos that you want, if you put them in these comments, we can chat about it. So yeah, hello to everybody. Abid, hi buddy, yeah, hello. Manyo Kumar, M Khan, Asif Khan, Leon, yeah, hi everybody. So first of all, Michael, you had a problem with gas rating.
Yeah, well, I never had. I didn't know I had a problem with gas rating, and I think it's something that's going to be quite. You know, we always in all of Alan's videos, you'll always see us saying things change, regulations are updated. There was a discussion that I had yesterday with somebody where they gave me their idea of how they gas rate, and in my opinion, it was completely wrong. But it prompted me to look into it, and you might have seen on Gas Chat last night. I put what's the word? Where you can pick different answers and
you put post, thread.
Yeah, ultimately. Yeah. So the question I posed was, how do guys gas rate and what tolerance do you allow? Now, it's always been my understanding, and I'm sure it's the understanding of a lot of people in the industry, that you always gas rate in max mode. And my understanding was also that there's a tolerance of +5, -10, which is one of the things that I put on yesterday. But this morning, as you can appreciate, I teach this every week, and I don't want to be giving people information that's even remotely vague. It should be black and white, in my opinion. And what I've learned this morning is that gas rating is anything but black and white. So what we did was we spoke to GasSafe this morning, and we asked, look, you know, we've seen the technical bulletin 141, which is the guidance on gas rating, and we asked about it. And the first thing that was a little bit, you know, came up straight away is that GasSafe, well, certainly the person we spoke to at GasSafe, wasn't familiar with the 5 to 10%. Well, he was, but he thought it had been rescinded a while back. But you know, he instantly found the technical bulletin, and he said, well, yeah, it's definitely a live document, so that 5 to 10% is still there. However, it's not as clear cut as that. One thing I didn't know, which I learned this morning, is that gas rating isn't a mandatory check, and neither is operating pressure for that matter. So my understanding has always been that part of your 26.9 checks is checking the gas supply, so you do that via gas rating, and also if you can, an operating pressure at the appliance. This morning I've learned that that's only if it's reasonably practicable. So that phrase, reasonably practicable, throws up a number of questions. It's reasonably practicable is generally associated with, is it possible to do this with, without it costing too much, or is it reasonably practicable for me to do it? I.e., is the meter working properly? There's a number of things. You came up with a good example, didn't you? You said about if you're working in a set of flats and the gas meter's at the top upstairs and there's no secondary meter, how are you meant to gas rate that appliance? How can you put it in max and then go downstairs? And it's a fair point. That probably falls under reasonably practicable. So point is, it's not a mandatory check. That's something I've certainly learned today. So when I pushed gas safe and said, well, look, I'm going to have people asking me questions on this. What should I be telling them? It goes back to pretty much what we've always known. You always service, you always carry out a gas rate as per MIs. So you always do it. If the boiler has got a service mode, you always do it in max mode, which won't come as a surprise to anybody. When I probed them on the 5 to 10%, plus 5 minus 10% allowance, the feedback I got from Gas Safe was, whilst that is a recommendation, it's also down to engineering judgment. So you've got to be really careful about whether we'd start, looking down the road of at risk in a boiler due to low gas pressure or high gas pressure, especially if the combustion fluid performance is all right. They actually changed the regulation in 2018. They said that if it's not reasonably practicable to carry out a gas rate and an operating pressure, you can just check the combustion fluid performance, which again is something that, although I've read the 26.9 checks a lot, I've never really taken notice of that part of it. It was a bit of an eye-opener for me, to be honest. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, what's your views on that?
So first of all, what I'd say is, what do you guys that are watching do when you do gas rating? Do you gas rate when you go do a boiler service? Do you actually go and do a gas rate? Do you just check inlet pressure? What, if you work for a company, what does your company ask you to do? So that'd be interesting for people to see that as well. The scenario where Michael was just talking about, I had a boiler that we installed. It were in an upstairs flat. The gas pipe was very short. It just went down. It were probably about 5 meters long for the gas pipe. But to get to that gas meter, it were all the way around the building. You had to go out of the building quite a long way, down some stairs, and then back around the building. You couldn't reasonably gas rate that. So what would you do? What would you do in that scenario? My view, personally, I think an inlet pressure on, say, like combi boilers is normally enough. My view. You sort of said gas rating.
Yeah, so I think, well, certainly on your air ratio, zero governor type valves on boilers, your inlet pressure is going to be affected directly by how much gas it's burning. So yeah, with other appliances though, like the likes of fires, etc., your inlet pressure isn't going to tell you what your burner pressure is going to be, because you could restrict that slightly.
Yeah.
But one of the things that did flag up was, with it probed the question, and I certainly asked Gas Safe about it. Well, what's the point if it's not a mandatory check? What's the point? Now, gas rating to me has always been about ensuring that your gas pipe works sufficient, you've got the right size injector, the injector's not blocked, the burner's adequately, the burner's all right, there's nothing blocking the burner, and that's why you always rate in max for me. But it probed the question. Well, at what point do you sort of say, well, hang on, that's incorrect? The general gist is, use all the tools available to you on a service or commissioning check, whatever it may be. Use all the tools available to you. An incorrect gas rate, for me, if it's outside the tolerances, and I would still use plus 5 minus 10, anything outside of that will prompt me to look for a reason why. It's taught me, really, stop thinking of it as a safety thing. Your combustion fluid performance, if that's all right, it could be an overgassed appliance or undergassed appliance, but it's burning all right. It's not, producing levels of CO or CO2 that are outside what we'd expect to see. So it's certainly if we think of it as a tool to sort of look for something else that might be a problem in future. So if you get a gas rate that's undergassed, it might prompt you to look at, is the gas valve starting to break down a little bit? Is the fan starting to slow down a little bit? Is there a problem with the injectors? Is there a problem with the gas pipework? That's the kind of thing.
So Paul says flue gas analyzer and inlet pressure, inlet standing, and dynamic gas rate as well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and
then make a cup of tea for customer.
Well,
wash the dishes, etc.
Yeah,
so I think is
that's the important one, isn't it?
I've got a question going on from gas rating now. Is technical bulletins. So, what would you do regarding sealing flues? So, if you're going to install a combi boiler, and this is a question for everybody, this should we seal the inside and the outside of the flue with sand and cement, and should we put the rubber seals on as well? What would you do with that? And same question to you. If you're going to install a boiler, because TB 152 gives us some guidance on that, technical bulletin, but some of the manufacturer's instructions sort of contradict what the TB bulletin says.
Yeah.
So
what's my view? Again, it goes down to engineering judgment. First of all, MIs. You'd definitely check MIs and you'd fit it to MIs. However, I take your point that some MIs are quite vague, and some different aspects of manufacturers legislation, manufacturers literature, not legislation, it doesn't always correlate with each other. So my view on it is, gut feel, I think flues should be sealed internally and externally with sand and cement, and the appropriate weather collar fitted. That's my view. Some MIs, I know Worcester allow for a high level flue where the weather collar it becomes a third seal. If the MIs state that, then fine. Yeah, I've got no issue with that. In fact, it probably gets you out of, you needing scaffold for some jobs, etc. I know other manufacturers have that as well. But my gut feeling is if I went out to look at on an inspection and I saw that the flue wasn't sealed internally or externally, I would certainly be noting it, definitely, and I would be endeavouring to look at MIs to see if it's been fitted correctly or not.
I think my view on that would be that I did a video what I put on, it actually went viral. It had 4.5 million views on TikTok, and it was a flue that was actually installed correctly, but somebody pulled it out, and that could happen. So if you've got certain estates or where kids could come past and they could pull a flue out, then I see that as an issue. So personally, I would always want to seal it with sand and cement, no matter what the manufacturer said. Manufacturer's instructions are minimum guidance, really. I would suggest if you do something over and above what they say, then you're just doing a better job. So for me, sand and cement when possible. But there is the scenario, as Michael said there. What about if it's an upstairs flat? What about if you can't get to outside? So then you'd use a flue that the manufacturers would say that you can just use the seal. Still then, I would probably still seal the inside. So you could still seal it with some sort of, polyfiller type product, or even sand and cement still. So that'd be my sort of...
Use fire cement, can't you, as well?
You could do. I mean, I don't think there's any need for that, but yeah, I mean, you could do. I've got another question for you. So they've said about mortar don't always use rubber seal, blah blah. These people are sort of agreeing with what we've said there. But what I wanted to chat about is fast track.
MLP.
Fast track plumbing.
Is there
fast track gas engineers?
Has there ever been a more controversial subject in the gas industry than fast track plumbers? And I served a full 5-year apprenticeship. I was one of the people who used to look at fast trackers and think, how can they possibly learn in 6 months what they do in 5 years? And I still think that that's true for the most part. But there's a lot of aspects of an MLP, which is a managed learning program, by the way. There's a lot of aspects of an MLP that are literally just gas based. They don't cover the wider sort of plumbing and heating aspect. Which you could argue is wrong, but Yeah.
I've had quite a lot of what the industry sort of calls fast track gas engineers, fast track plumbers, whatever, managed learning program. I've had quite a lot of them come with me. What I would always say is it's the start of a journey. So today, Michael's learnt something, and I've learnt that Michael's learnt something, so I learnt something as well. But in this job, we're always learning every day. So we're doing an air source heat pump tomorrow. It's going to be the first air source heat pump I'm ever going to do. So I'll be learning on that air source heat pump. And I think that my opinion is the fast track route or the managed learning program route is some of the best gas engineers I know, I personally know that I consider really good friends, came on the fast track route. And some of them gas engineers are better gas engineers than me, in my opinion. And they did the fast track route, but what they did after they went and qualified, they got more experience, so they went and worked with people for free, which I think is a good thing.
I suppose it also comes down to, it's very much about the person. I know, and I've seen, because we also do a lot of work with colleges at NGCFE, I've seen lots of kids who've come to the end of a level 3 qualification, who've come here, and they've been underprepared. Some cases, you know, down to the fact that they've been, you know, COVID was an issue. Some of them have been at a detriment because of COVID. But some of them just haven't had the right attitude, and you could tell that they're just happy to do the bare minimum. I know guys who've been qualified through the same route as me, you know, a full apprenticeship, and if someone was to say, would you give them a job, I'd say no, because they haven't had the right attitude. They've literally done the bare minimum to get the qualification. They've done nothing since. And it goes back to what you just said then. Once you've got that qualification, you know, guys who are watching this now, who've done a full apprenticeship, will know the vast majority of what you learned was on site. I certainly think that. Some people may disagree. The college was the theory side of things, but the vast majority of what I learned from my mentor on site. And going back to the point, in the same vein, I've also come across some really good MLP kids who've come through. They've done, you know, 6 to 12 months here, and you know, some of them are really good, and I'm getting reports from people who they're working with now, and they're light years ahead of some of the kids who've done full apprenticeships. And you know, it's took for me really to be here and see the journey they've gone on to understand that it does come down to the individual a lot of the time. But that said, I do take the point that they're not going to learn system design, they're not going to learn a lot of the stuff to do with the actual system, because putting the boiler on the wall is one thing, or you know, fitting a gas appliance, but it's everything that comes along with it. And those the MLP guys tend to be the ones who struggle with regards to, you know, if this has happened and what could be the cause externally to the boiler. But yeah, that's my view on MLPs. I don't know if you agree with that.
So what I've often found is a lot of the MLP guys or fast track route guys, they know everything with regards to regs and things like this, but practically they've got very little experience. So for instance, taking floorboards up, or even as simple as putting a drill bit. I once had a guy with me, he didn't even know how to take the drill bit out of the drill. So very, very basic, simple things. So in my opinion, if you are going to go down that MLP route, try and get some experience with as many people as you can, and don't just get experience with one company as well. If you can, try and go to different people, and that way you'll get more experience. My advice, somebody's just phoned me just before we did this, asked me about, they've got somebody, he's 57 years old, and he wants to train to be a gas engineer. So my advice to that would be, go and do as much practical work as you can, even if it's not related to gas. So it could be just going and doing some DIY, lifting floorboards up as a gas engineer. That we're going to do that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what just to pick up on something you said then, I'd be very surprised if an MLP student at the end of the course couldn't lift floorboards. I would certainly have questions to ask about the evidence they got in the portfolio if that's the stage they were at. You'd expect that, you know, because they've got to do a serious amount of work on site to get signed off.
Would that depend on different centres though? Because
it's really difficult for me to comment on other centres.
Would some of the I mean, could it be that some people just pass people with, or is there like a set standard that people come out at?
There should be, and this is my view, and I think I'm probably going to speak out of term here, but I think that every awarding body should have the same criteria that has to be met on a portfolio for a managed learning programme. I mean, one of the reasons why I like our awarding body is because the portfolio is really inclusive. I've seen...
Neil asked, what is MLP?
It's a managed learning programme. So people refer to them as fast trackers in the industry, and you could argue that that's probably, you know, that's one way of putting it. But a managed learning programme is somebody who's not from a gas background, or necessarily even a heating background, who's decided that they want a career change, they want to move into the gas industry. They might not be in a position where they're able to go to college and get it funded now by the government because they might not be of the right age, but they've decided to invest and they're going to do a course with a centre like us. Yeah, there's lots involved in an MLP. Going back to your question about the standards, my view, every awarding body should have the same standard and the same criteria. If it was down to me, they'd have the same portfolio. They have to get signed off. Ours is really inclusive. That's one of the reasons why I like UK Cert. There's a lot they've got to do on site to be able to get the evidence for our portfolios. Whereas I think other awarding bodies may not have the same.
Would you say it's easy to become a gas engineer?
I wouldn't like to do what the MLP lads, certainly our MLP lads, have to do in the amount of time that they've got to do it. We sort of aim to get MLP students through from the first day in centre. They've got to do 280 hours of guided learning. That's just in centre. You know, so they've got to do 280 hours of learning how to tightness test, learning how to do the various processes associated with what we do. And they've got to spend hours. I mean, if I said to you, you know, they've got to do 20 hours of tightness testing, I challenge anybody to spend 20 hours talking about how you do a tightness test. But they've got to do it. So these kids, well, I say kids, that's probably the wrong thing to call. We've had a lot of adults too. They've got to do a lot of hours on different aspects of the gas industry. I wouldn't, and then, you know,
and to be honest with you, even when I was doing so I did an apprenticeship as well.
Yeah.
But I certainly didn't do 20 hours.
Yeah.
Tightness testing.
Yeah.
On in that time. You know, that's a lot of... It
is, and you know, 280 hours, that's just in centre. It's 40 full days, not, you know, take your dinners and whatnot out of it, that's 40 full days. And that's as well as the stuff on site. And I think, of all of the, we've probably done, I hazard a guess, probably 30 MLPs now in the last year. And the guys that we've seen come through, they always tend to find that the on-site stuff's the hardest stuff to get, because similar to your gas, when you come in for your ACS, you'll be asked to work on stuff that is not really around anymore. So, you know, we're all used to working on positive pressure boilers and stuff on ACS, which, I mean, I can count on one hand the amount of times I've come across like a netta heat or something that's been positive pressure. And it's the same with the MLP. We asked them to work on some gas fires now, and they have to achieve that in the portfolio, otherwise they don't get signed off. So they come up against, you know, knocking on people's doors, asking if them and the mentor can service the gas fire, if they know that they've got that type of gas fire. There's a lot of evidence they've got to get in a short amount of time, and that's why generally we find that they might have done the 40 hours in centre, but we can't put them through their assessments until the portfolio's done, and that is what some of them struggle with.
So more or less what I'd say with that is it's down to the individual. I think that most people could become a gas engineer, but you do need to put the effort in, and you will always be learning. And even me now today, and I've done this job for 30 years, I'm always learning. I learn things every day, and it's just about, if somebody asks me a question, I'll try and find the answer. If I don't know, I'll try and find out. So I will do things like I'll phone Gas Safe, or I'll check in different books. I'll find the instructions from the manufacturer of, if I'm installing a boiler, read the instructions, condensates, read the literature for condensates, whatever the situation is, and it's all, everybody's. We run obviously gas chat on Facebook, and the questions on there sometimes from people that's been doing job a long time. People are sort of stuck in the ways and they don't always follow the installation instructions. Going back to condensates, people don't always install condensates correctly because they've done it one way forever and their condensates have never frozen up. So it's, for me, it's always about improving as you're going. None of us are perfect. I come and do my, when I do my ACS, I do my controls. And we did a video on controls a few days ago. And the last time I did them controls was when I did my ACS last time. So it's like, if you don't do it every day, it's more difficult. So controls is one thing that when a lot of people come on their ACS, they don't know. And this isn't just new trainees, this isn't just fast trackers. This is people that might have been doing job 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, and they'll get stuck with controls because they can't understand the wording sometimes.
It's also stuff that they don't see. You know, one thing that we say about the gas industry, if you ask anybody, and people may disagree, you generally have your sort of what you do, not, I mean, when I worked for the council years ago, they had service engineers, they had installers, and they had breakdown engineers. They were not segregated, but they had their own trades almost, like a trade within a trade. And I've found over the years that that's what people tend to do. They stick with what they know. So a lot of the controls that we come across, certainly on the rigs, you don't see every day. And we see some really, really good engineers who come through, who fly through every aspect of the ACS. They get to the controls board and they'll know the flame rectification because they work with boilers all the time. You know, they'll know the controls like the back boiler and whatnot, the multifunctional control valve, but they look at the liquid expansion thermostats and they look at the other sort of thermal electric valves and whatnot, and it stumps them because it's not something you work with every day, and that's just human nature. If you don't work with something all the time, you're not going to be, you know, on the money every time, every 5 years when you come to it. And that's what your refresh is for ultimately. It's to sort of say, well, look, we have to teach you that, we have to put you through your paces because there's a chance you might come across it in the field. We don't know what you do when you're out there. We don't, when people come to us for ACS, they don't say I'm an installer, therefore I shouldn't have to do that. We have to treat everybody the same. You know, rightly or wrongly, that's what we have to do. But yeah, it all boils down to, if you're not confident on something, it's great to be able to have things like Alan's channel to be able to look at to get some really useful information if needs be. The controls video we did was quite inclusive, I thought, and I think anybody who's going for ACS in the future, that video will help them certainly. Watch it 2 or 3 times, and by the time you go in, you'll have at least an idea of what you're looking for if you never had it before. Yeah, pretty much with controls.
So another thing that I just thought of, hydrogen boilers, and again, over to the people that are watching, what do you think about hydrogen boilers? Is that going to be the next thing? Will we have hydrogen boilers instead of gas? What's your thoughts on this?
So I'm very pro renewables, so I've got a renewables business that I have, and I am very pro renewables. Am I pro hydrogen? Yeah, if it was feasible. I'm pro anything that's going to reduce carbon emissions, save customers money, that kind of thing. The thing with hydrogen for me is as follows: it's too expensive to make, and I don't think we're going to see the cost of it come down anytime soon. And also, where do you store it? How do you deliver it? The gas mains we've got in this country aren't up to it at the minute. There's going to be people with varying different attitudes towards hydrogen. Most boilers are now made to take a blend. However, how do you then facilitate the transition from a blend to full hydrogen?
I've noticed a lot of manufacturers are using that as a sales technique now. So all boilers for a long time, is it 20 years or whatever, have been hydrogen mix ready as far as I'm aware. So they would be able to work on a 20% mix. Manufacturers are now having sales literature showing that their boilers are hydrogen ready or hydrogen mix ready, which is no different, in my understanding, to what they've been for the last 20 years. What is that? Am I right there?
So I wasn't aware of the 20-year thing. I thought it was more recent than that. But
maybe somebody could comment below.
Yeah, I mean,
as far as I'm aware of that.
Point being, I think, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, someone will be able to tell me otherwise, we are a number of years away from being able to reasonably suggest hydrogen as a replacement for natural gas. I think there's again, this is an opinion, heat pumps for me are the most reasonable thing we've got at the minute to sort of transition away from natural gas boilers.
So heat pumps are the next one that I've got written down here. So going back to hydrogen first, my take on hydrogen. Will it be the future? I think there will be some hydrogen, but will it be the answer? I don't really think it'll be. I think there'll be a mixture, and I think air source heat pumps will be part of that mixture, which is the next question that I've got for Michael, really.
I don't think that there is a one size fits all. I mean, I had a customer who called me yesterday, and he's got a number of properties on the same sort of plot, if you like, and he was talking to me. He was quite adamant that he wanted a heat pump, and I had the conversation I had with him was, well, I wouldn't suggest a heat pump for you. I don't think his lifestyle and the way his property was set out, I don't think that, I said to him, you'd be better off just having a really efficient combi boiler, a really efficient gas boiler, sorry. It's not all, people need to get away from this one size fits all mentality. It's not going to be the case. There's plenty of people that I speak to who want a heat pump, but it's just not right for them. So I wouldn't suggest that. I'll suggest something else that would be a better fit for them. Go on, heat pumps, what do you want to know?
So obviously, as we've said already, tomorrow we're going to be fitting an heat pump at my house, me and Michael. Also, there's another couple of guys that come in to help out on that as well. We've done a full heat loss on there. It seems to indicate on that heat loss that actually the air source heat pump will be cheaper to run. Not by much. So we did the calcs, didn't we? And initially if you remember when we did the calcs, we worked it out on design temperatures inside that your family don't tend to have. You tend to have after a discussion, it worked out that your family like a cooler house, if you like. So we were able to play with the figures then and lower his heat loss as a result. And then we were able to fit a heat pump, select a heat pump, we haven't fitted it yet, that would be be better for Alan's property. But yeah, I think that the point is that there's a lot of bad press about them at the minute, really, and it's not really deserved. And we've got to remember that this is a new technology. But it's not new though, is it?
Well, no, it's not. But
it's new to us.
Yeah, in terms of it being in, how long have heat pumps been manufactured in our country and at any great scale? They've not really. They're just starting, really.
Well, do we even manufacture them? I would imagine that they're all imported in.
I'll change
from every manufacturer.
Well, yeah, I'll change that. I think how long have UK manufacturers or manufacturers who are operating in the UK been pushing heat pumps, and it's only recently, isn't it?
Yeah.
And gas boilers have had a long time to get better. Remember, old standard efficiency boilers, they've come on leaps and bounds over the years. Heat pumps have got a fair way to go, and they're getting better all the time. They're better now than what they were a year or two ago, infinitely so. So, yeah. So
we are going to put an air source heat pump in at my house. We will do some videos on that. If you've got any questions about that, please put me comments below. We'll try and give you as much information as we can on air source heat pumps. I will always just be honest. We'll give you my honest opinion. I mean, I've got PV and I've got battery storage. So for me, it's sort of a no-brainer to have an air source heat pump, because part of the year I will get energy for the air source heat pump for free. So we're going to totally disconnect the gas and try this with an air source heat pump. If later on it's mega expensive and I can't afford to run it, then we might look at putting gas back in, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but we will do some honest videos on that.
It's also, you know, you asked the question before, we never addressed it. You said about the cost of it. I mean, the cost of fitting an air source heat pump at the minute is prohibitive. There's no getting away from that. I mean, the government's got the bus fund out now, well, the boiler upgrade scheme, and that gives you £5,000 if you're able to get a voucher for it. Most people will be able to, but that's a massive help. But you still might be paying out £5-6 for a heat pump. You know, depending on your property, what work you've got to have done. We can't retrofit these things. It's completely different technology. You can retrofit them in some cases, but we do need to. The system designers, in my opinion, you may say different, is 95, if not more, % of the work that goes into them. Sticking them on the wall and piping them up is the easy bit. It's making sure that the design correctly, the commission correctly, and I mean, the full commission procedure for the heat pump should take a good few hours to make sure that it's going to be set up for the customer to have the most efficient system that they can. And there's a massive education piece that we need to do for heat pumps as well. Customers are used to just being able to turn boilers on and it being hot within minutes. That's not going to be how they're going to get the most out of a heat pump. And I think that's going to be our biggest obstacle as an industry. Well, certainly the guys who are going over to fitting them. It's going to be a huge obstacle because customers, especially I'm going to say old, but I don't mean it in that way. You know, the older generation who are just stuck in the ways. They don't really, they can't change much about what they do.
I think it's just going to mean that we've got to take more care on system design that we used to do originally. So when I first started as an apprentice and first few years into plumbing, we used to size central heating systems correctly at the flow rates at that time, and we used to measure each room and we'd make sure we got the right size radiator for each room. What tended to happen going forward from there is you'd go buy a heat pack, and the heat pack would have a 600 by 600 or a 1200 or an 800, and you just fit them whichever radiator suited that room the best. I've always on every single install that I've ever done for new installs, I've always done a heat loss on every single job, and I've always sized the radiators correctly at that time. But obviously that's not an industry, that's as a standard in the industry, that's just not happened. And I think what it's going to mean is that we're going to go back to that, but with a difference that now we're going to be doing sizing things on low temperature, which is obviously going to be more efficient. It's going to be better for customer. I can't really see any downsides to that.
I think it's going to certainly raise standards in the industry. But
if people follow it,
adopt it, yeah, that's going to be the biggest part. But to be fair, you know, and again, it boils down to whether people are going to adopt it. You look at what's happened on the 15th of June, the new Part L regs, even on boilers moving forward, you're going to be, well, certainly full systems, you're going to be asked to start designing systems to 50 degree flows. So, yeah, it's also going to say that we need to start thinking about heat loss calculations a lot more. I'm with Alan, you know, I still do heat loss in the vast majority of cases of the jobs that I go to. Yeah,
which we haven't done with combi boilers. Combi boilers sort of a little bit, it took away the need to do a proper heat loss because you could
plug in and go.
You could just throw them at wall, and a lot of people did just throw them at wall, really, to be honest. Drive-by boiler installs. And they want size correctly, they want range rated. Years and years ago, we used to install boilers. We might install a floor standing boiler. We'd have to range rate it to size at property. And then we went on to boilers that supposedly we didn't need to range rate anymore. The boilers would modulate to what it needed to be. And then now it's sort of gone full circle again that we need to be range rating boilers again. So what's your view on range rating? And
I think every single boiler that's capable of being range rated should be range rated to the heat loss of the property. But again, it brings us back to if an engineer is not familiar with heat loss calculations or doesn't know the heat load of a property, how does he know what to range rate it to? It used to be something that you did. Well, I'm assuming it still will be for the most part. Apprenticeships will cover heat loss calculations. if they should be carried out, we shouldn't be oversizing boilers.
We will be doing a course on that though, won't we?
Yeah.
At some point.
So with regards to range rating, if you think of it, it's all right if you've got a heat demand in a property and you just turn the boiler on, but it's not been range rated. It ramps up as hot as possible, chucks out as much heat as it can, and then it gets the property really hot and then modulates down. But that's not great for the boiler. It's not great for the levels of comfort within a property.
Is that going to matter as much with boilers that start low and modulate up? So, for instance, some boiler manufacturers, they'll Wiesmann does it?
Yeah.
So it'll start low and then it'll sort of go up, and it won't go up to, if it's a 40 kilowatt boiler, it wouldn't go up to 40. It'd only go up to what it decided it needed.
So I've got a bit of an unpopular opinion. I'm sure it will be. I just think we've had guys here who've come into the centre and they've asked about heat pumps, and within a minute of talking to them about the design aspect, they're instantly trying to look for ways to circumnavigate that design aspect. I think we need to address that, to address the mentality within the industry of trying to do it really the easy way all the time, cutting corners. Let's invest in a bit of training. Let's invest in being able to do things properly. The costs obviously an implication. If somebody is going to go and spend a fortune on, or spend too much time on heat loss in a property, only for somebody else to come in and overcut them, then I appreciate that as an implication on guys' earning potential. But I think we should stop looking at it as how do we get around doing it and just go, right, well, how do we do it and how do we get better at it? That's my personal take. And I think that if you are that way inclined and you are that type of engineer, you tend to attract customers who you are a good fit for. Would you agree with that?
I think there's a balance between cheap, people have to pay the bills, and if they're competing against people that's going to do, you know, what we might say is a proper job, the person doing a proper job is going to be a lot more expensive.
Totally.
So it's where as a customer, would you pay more and get a better job, or do you just want something that works and then pay less?
It's really difficult.
It's difficult.
It is difficult.
It's
and
difficult,
I appreciate that.
and so if you're if you install a lot of boilers, I think it's going to be, you know, quite tricky to do a heat loss and do all stuff on every install.
Yeah.
If you are a smaller company and you take pride in, you want to do best job for customer, then you've got the ability to be able to do that yourself. Whether you're going to earn much more money, you'll probably actually earn less money because you're going to spend more time to do the job.
Doing the calculation. I mean, to be fair, a proper heat loss calculation probably puts, in my opinion, a proper heat loss cal probably takes about 3 hours from start to finish to do it properly.
But would customers want to pay for that?
No, that's
the
issue, isn't it? But yeah, I get that. I completely get that. But there's lots of things, isn't there? I mean, there's lots of things that we see out in the field that not, if you take heat loss calcs away from it, things like flow rates. I know people who literally don't even bother taking flow rates on boilers. You know, cold water flow rates at the taps, and they're fitting boilers to combi boilers to properties with 6-7 litre hot water.
I went to one on a new housing estate, and it had with about 9 litres a minute it had coming in, and they had a 40 kilowatt Baxi Potterton combi, and it was like they turned tap on it and it was white coming out. It was just scalding, and then the boiler just shut off, and then it'd go off for a while and then come back on again. Yeah, it's just, I think we've been chatting quite a lot, haven't we?
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, it hasn't been too bad. It's been all right.
If you like this type of format, if you want us just to do this type of video, then please put some comments in video. If anybody's still watching, put comments in video, let us know, and you know, we might try do this again. Today is just a bit of a
trial.
Wing it, really. We've not really, if you have a look on there, I didn't have no notes when I started, and I've just sort of wrote them down, them few things down as I've gone on. So we've just sort of winged it on this one today. But if you put a load of comments in this video, and you want us to, then maybe we could do this again and have some more factual information, answer some questions.
If it proves to have been all right, then we could make a regular thing of it.
What somebody's just put here is you're going to have to charge for the calculations.
100%, absolutely 100%. I'll tell you about when I was trying to get MCS. I found that because MCS need to do inspections on jobs in order to sign you off, for lack of a better phrase, or the awarding body you go with, trying to get a customer who's happy for you to do their job without knowing that you're not going to be able to claim them any sort of funding because you're not yet MCS, that first customer is really difficult to get. So at that point, you're probably not going to be able to charge, because what additional benefits are you bringing to that customer? But I totally agree that, well, certainly in the vast majority of cases of heat loss calcs that I do, I will charge. I'll often say it comes off your next job. You know, not your next job. If I'm doing a heat loss calc for a system and if a charge...
It's going to be difficult though, isn't it? For, if somebody wants to get free quotes, then they'd have to get free heat losses from 3 different companies.
No, so it's depending on who you get.
They would, won't they? Because, for instance...
There's nothing stopping...
But that second company is not going to rely on somebody else's heat loss, are they?
But that's their choice. If I personally wouldn't rely on somebody else's calculations, I would do my own. But again, you're back to, is the customer going to pay for it? It's
So really with that, the customer's really going to have to decide, yeah, I want this person to do it, whatever the price is.
Yeah.
I think that's tricky. I personally think it's tricky to charge for the calculations, but on the other side of it, you're a business, you can't work for free. Do you feel that if you do 10 of them, you might get 4 and it'll average out and it's worth it?
Yeah.
Or do you try and charge for them all and then not get any?
It's a lot of money to absorb, isn't it?
It's a difficult one, and I suppose the industry will decide. If everybody goes and charges, then customers will have to pay.
You can use rule of thumbs as well, although it's not recommended really. Rule of thumbs might help you to not have to go down the full route of a heat loss until you've actually got some commitment from the customer. So your rule of thumbs, you know, watts per metre squared, etc. like that, that might give you an idea of what sort of size heat pump or boiler you're going to need, and you can use that to then quote the customer or give the customer an estimate with the view to, look, it's going to be, you know, in this bracket for your price. Are you happy to go ahead on this basis, and then I'll do a proper quote for it?
There's quite a lot of variables there, though, isn't there? For,
yeah, there is.
You know, like with my property, I've got some roofs, glass roof. I've got different rooms at different years built, so it'd be actually quite tricky to give a quote based on.
Saying that though, yours wasn't a difficult property to heat loss. I mean, I know what you're saying. You had extensions built at different times and stuff, and you've got different roof fabrics in certain parts of the house, but it still wasn't massively time consuming. Yours, it wasn't too bad.
But would you be able to do that on like a rule of thumb?
Probably. You might struggle.
And if you did do it on a rule of thumb, is that really then? Because if I did a quote rule of thumb, I'd be over-speccing price because I'd want to cover myself.
Yeah.
Does that mean then I'm going to be less competitive and I'm not going to get a job? So yeah, it's going to be
it's going to be a really interesting few years in the heating industry, in my opinion. I think we've got the next 5 to 10 years is going to be, we're on the parapet of change, aren't we? We're sort of, some of us are adopting renewables, some of us are staying with gas, and I mean, I think we're definitely going to have at least 20 odd years of gas, in my opinion.
This is a question for you.
Oh God.
A Betacom 30C combi boiler. What do you think to them? Do you rate them? I'm not going to comment on whether I rate them or not.
I'm not overly familiar with it, to be honest. It's a Beta Glowworm, isn't it? A Betacom.
Yeah. So it's a lower end budget style boiler, isn't it?
And again, this is going to be a controversial subject. I think that most boilers now are fitted using similar parts, and I also think that if you fit that boiler, if you spec the right boiler and you fit it to a clean system, and it's commissioned properly and ultimately it's looked after, I think that most boilers are relatively compatible. There are some boilers that I'd stay well away from. I won't, for legal reasons, I probably won't mention what they are. But yeah, to answer the question, the Betacom's not something I'm overly familiar with. It's not something I've fitted personally in the past. However, I think most of the money you pay for the high-end boilers now tends to be for warranty. And so that's my opinion. I hope that helps. I'm sorry if it doesn't.
Just going on to flushing then, just because you've just gone on to it, British Standards BS 7593. So when you go do a boiler service, they're asking now for us to do a water sample or a water test.
Mm-hmm.
What's your view on that? Will that be adopted by bigger companies?
I've had one of the bigger companies speak to me recently about this, asking about, you know, what they are obliged to do. This is, again, don't take this as fact, this is my opinion.
This is all opinion, by the way.
So nobody sue me. I think that the new Part L regs, British standards are British standards, they're not law. They're not law. And the guidance, the new Part L regs.
The important thing to say to that though, when we say it's not law, is that a lot of boilers have long warranties now.
Yes.
So if you don't do what some of them things say, then it may be you jeopardise your boiler warranty.
Not only that, it will definitely do that. You know, if you fit a boiler onto a really mucky system and you don't bother paying attention to the British standards, then the manufacturer has every right to say, well, we're not warranting this appliance. The customer then could claim against you. But more to the point, if you look at not just water treatment, but if you look at the likes of TRVs and whatnot, that we're now getting told by a lot of people are a must. If you don't fit them and you choose not to opt for best practice, has the customer then got a claim that they're wasting energy because of something you've chose not to adopt? Again, it's going to be a really interesting few years to see what the score is. I think always, for me, I don't like it when manufacturers push things as a requirement. You have to have it. I've read the new Part L document from front to back, and nowhere can I see it says must. A lot of the time it says should, and even when you scroll down, a lot of the time it says minimum recommended requirement, and then it says best practice. So it's a little bit grey. But I always say, if you can, I mean, every job I do, I fit to be at British standards. I always flush a system correctly. I always put a filter on. I always put TRVs on, because to me, that's best practice. But again, I do take issue when a lot of manufacturers are pushing things saying you have to do this, when it's down to you guys, what sort of job you want to do. If you want to decide to not go for for best practice, that's down to you. It's your decision as an engineer. That's my take on it.
So my view on flushing is probably the most important part of the job. It's more important than the boiler that you choose. And if you flush a system correctly, you're going to have less problems with the system going forward. That's my view on it. I've always tried to do the best flush I can in the time that I've got available. So some jobs, cheaper jobs if you like, you don't always have a lot of time, so then you've got to try and find ways to flush that as good as you can. But when you fill that benchmark in, it asks you if you flush that system.
It does now, yeah.
So well, it has done for a long time.
But most of the manufacturing instructions now, where we used to get sort of 12 servicing boxes that, you know, for every year that the boiler's there, it's now they're much bigger, and there's a lot more in there for water treatment. And I think that is a ramification of the fact that we're now getting 10, 12-year warranties, 14 years in some cases. I think manufacturers are now starting to say, well, right, now's the time to start fitting these appliances properly. If we're going to start putting our money where our mouth is and have these big long warranties, which I don't really like anyway, we need to have some sort of...
Without mentioning the manufacturers here, I actually did a job where I videoed, I recorded the job, I tested the water passed, and the boiler had a fault which were actually not related to water quality, but the manufacturers went out and actually pulled the boiler and they actually wrote it down. There were an issue with water quality. So I actually went straight back to that job within about an hour of the customer phoning me. The engineer had since gone, and we then tested the water again. I drained it down again, and the water was clean. There was nothing wrong with the water at all. So all I'd say there is, if you're an engineer, is prove it. So for instance, I now use AD Check, which you can take a picture in front of a customer. That then can be emailed to customer while you're there in front of them. So you've got as much proof as you can have, really. So you need to prove, don't just do these things and write it down, actually prove that you've done it. Take pictures, video, do these things in front of a customer so the customer knows that when you go to that radiator, test that water, do it in front of customer, take the picture in front of customer, take it in front of boiler, so it's proof. So you're covering yourself, because what you don't want to do is 2, 3, 4 years down the line, manufacturers want to get your service work off you or whatever. I'm not saying they will do that, but it may be that they start pulling people's work, and so just cover yourself and record everything that you do.
ProCheck's a really good tool for that, and probably should state that Fairnox do something similar too, with the manufacturers are available. But
I think the thing with the AD one though, the AD one, for me, I'm not, I love Fairnox. I think Fairnox is a really good company, but the AD one, at least you can, it's more expensive, but at least you can take the picture, at least you can do it in front of customer, and it is a little bit that it's a bit of a show, because but the customer knows that you took that extra care to do that job correctly. Whereas if you do use something else, even if you've got a test kit which is amazing and it might work better than the AD Check, it's hard to prove that. It's hard to, unless you video it and video a customer smiling and making you a cup of tea or something,
which you're not going to do.
Which you're not going to do. It's difficult, but at least with the AD Check, you can take snapshots of that. You can actually attach that to your invoice. So I use Invoice to Go at the minute, and in that I'd put the pictures in to prove. So even in 2-3 years time, if I go back to that invoice, I can see that this date, this time, that's what it was, and I've got proof of that.
It's stored on AD's cloud as well. They store all the information on a cloud, so if you ever need to go back to it, you can go onto your ProCheck account and it's there. You can always just draw the job off and say, look, well, there it is. It was fine when I did it. Customer signed it as well. There's I think water treatment is going to be a massive part of our industry moving forward. It's been neglected quite a lot over the last sort of 10-15 years. Maybe not the last 5, but certainly before then it's been neglected. You go back only 10 years ago, most people weren't fitting filters to systems, most people weren't. And filters aren't, some people treat that as a safeguard for the boiler. It's not. In a lot of cases, your filter's only going to catch so much debris, and you've got a lot more going through it as well. So
I'd say as well with filters are not an excuse for not to flush the system. The system needs flushing. What most filters will do, they will get magnetite out of the system, but they won't get dirt out of the system as such. So for instance, if you've got orange water in a system that's not magnetic yet, your filter's not going to do anything to sort that out, or most filters are not going to do out. So flushing, to me, is more important than anything else. Flush the system correctly to start with, and then in my opinion, I would always put a filter on almost every job that I've ever done for the last 15 years. Since AD first bought out the MagnaClean, we've installed filters. So I would say filters is a must, but it's not a must, it's a should. Is it? What is it now? Should? Must? It's definitely not a must.
It says should, it doesn't say must. But if you were to believe a lot of what we're seeing coming out from manufacturers, you will be forgiven for thinking it's a must. But again, I might be wrong. But if you read the Part L doc, it's free online. Have a look at it. I can't see anywhere where it says must. It seems to suggest that it seems to say should, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. The best practice is to do it. Why not?
But we're not saying that we're right on any of these things, so please put your opinions below. Let us know what you think. I've done this job a long time, so has Michael, and we just give our opinion. Sometimes, as you get older, you get stuck in your ways, so it's good to see different opinions.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It gives you, yeah.
Have we babbled on long enough?
Yeah, how long have we been on for?
We don't have any more. We don't have any more questions. So, no, just there's a question there about pipe sizing, but I think what we'll do with pipe sizing, we'll just do a video separate for that. You can't do that. Just yeah, I mean, most important thing with that is that you've got the right pressures at your inlet of the boiler.
Get yourself a
or
book.
Whatever.
I mean, I like Corgi, I like the Essential Gas Safety. A lot of people choose different books. They feel, you know, I'm one of the guys who works here, Paul. He's an avid lover of the NECIC books. They're good books as well, but the point being, get yourself a decent gas book. They're not that expensive. And you'll find that you'll never really need to ask questions. On that point, though, that's a good point. One thing that I have noticed, and you know, gas chat's a fantastic arena for asking for advice and whatnot, but
can you still use sorry to interrupt, can you still use whole house method for boilers?
Whole house method? What do you mean? Oh, do you mean whole house?
So they'll measure the full house. Would that be a... You can't really do that when you're doing a heat loss, really, because you need to do...
You mean, what's it made of? What's the house built of?
Need to do each individual room anyway, because you need to know what size each individual radiator would be.
You might be able to, if you knew the building fabric and you were able to utilise the whole house method for the whole property given the building fabric, then you might be able to arrive at a total heat loss, but you wouldn't be able to break down to what each room needs, and that's the important bit, really.
So so with SRC pump, what we'd be doing is we'd be seeing if the radiators are going to be suitable for the flow temperatures that you're going to... So in my house, we've sized my house, and I don't really have to change any radiators, do I, in mine?
Two that might be undersized, but what Alan said is...
One of them, one at bedroom hasn't got a radiator yet, so we'll sort that out after. We don't normally, in my bedroom, we've never had radiators on, ever. So I haven't actually fitted a radiator in there.
I mean, even if you went down the route of saying, well, look, there's two radiators that seem to be undersized in the property. If they're not massively undersized, you could say, well, do you know what? I'll just see how I go. And that's ultimately what you've said, isn't it?
That's exactly what I'm going to do in my house. I remember many years ago, I put a filter on one of my boilers in my house, and it had like 20 rads. And then I put another filter on, and people were saying, oh, you're going to have an issue with too much resistance going through filters. So then I started putting more and more filters on. I ended up with I think I had 5 filters on an end. And what I'm trying to get is, I try and test stuff to its maximum. So with this air source heat pump, we're going to install this air source heat pump. I'm going to try it over winter, and I'm not going to change any radiators. As I go around my house, doing my house up, I'm going to change radiators anyway. So it's actually works quite well for me in the fact that we will size it, do it for now, install it, see worst case scenario, because the radiators are already there. There's no update work at all to do with system, and then see how we go. And then later on, we can install bigger radiators if we need to. Michael said that some of them we won't really need to. There's some rooms that
some of them
I think that
still. Some of them are oversized. Massively.
Some of them that I think I will definitely, just because I fancy installing one of them triple K3 massive radiators and getting about 10 of us to lift them.
You probably won't have to push the house will fall down. Going back to what I was just saying before, you know, most people who follow Alan will be familiar with Gas Chat. Gas Chat's a great forum for being able to ask, for gas engineers and apprentices to be able to ask for advice and pose situations. It's also a good laugh for a lot of the time. But one thing that I would like to sort of suggest, only because a lot of the guys who come through the centre don't seem to know it, your gas card, you're accessing things like this, technical bulletins, you know, industry safety updates and standard updates. You can literally use the details on your gas card. Even if you're not the account holder, you can use the details on your gas card, just your license number and the company number, to access all of the technical bulletins. They're free. And a lot of people who come through who aren't the sort of primary contact on the account, who are just employed by the company, they don't seem to know that you can access various parts of the GasSafe website. Certainly the parts that have got technical guidance, like the technical bulletins and whatnot, that you will be able to gain a lot of information from just by putting in 2 numbers. When you log on to the engineer login area, it'll ask for login details, but there's also a little tab that you can click that says license number, login by your license number. Utilise it. I'm not saying don't ask for advice, but the best people to get advice from are the people at GasSafe. Rather than, and I'm not saying that Gas Chat is you know, going to give you wrong information, but you're going to get a lot of opinions on arenas like that, which is great. Opinions are fantastic, and you know, if everybody thought the same and everybody had the same opinion on things, then you know, nothing would ever change, would they? They're going to be stuck in the ways. But just a bit of a heads up anyway. You can do that. Just use your gas card, all the details on it. It's fine.
What I'd say as well is with that is ask the person that asked the question is not the stupid one. So you should on Gas Chat or on any of the groups ask the questions, because they might shoot you down in flames. They might say you should have known this, but you'll probably learn, and lots of other people will also be learning, but they just daren't post. So I'll post. People send me questions, and even when I know the answer or I think that I know the answer, I'll still put that question into Gas Chat. So a lot of people look on Gas Chat and think Alan don't know he ain't got a clue what he's doing. But the reason I do that is because I know that if 2 or 3 people has asked me the same question, we've got 15,000 members on Gas Chat. There's quite a lot of them people also will not know the answer to that question. And even sometimes there ain't always a right answer, to be honest, or sometimes things are very, like with the TB152, the manufacturers say one thing with flue, TB152 tends to indicate something totally different. So there's not always, but it's nice to chat, discuss things, and just remember that none of us are perfect. I don't know everything, and I feel that I'm quite good at regulations and quite good, but nobody knows everything. And even if you've done job 20 years, 30 years, you're not going to know everything. And it's good to put stuff into a forum and ask that question. You'll learn, other people will learn, and yeah. But always, even when you get the answer, even if you have 10 people give you an answer, don't take that as gospel. Then they've all discussed it. Then go find out. Phone GasSafe, read manufacturer's instructions. Them type of things are the stuff that, and if you can't find it in any of them things, phone the manufacturer. Yep. So a lot of time, I once got some bad advice from manufacturers for a fluing, and I quoted this job, and I went to do this job, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to check, I want this in writing, and I phoned to get it in writing, and the person that were going to give it me in writing told me something totally different, which ended up costing me about £600 on a job. I actually made, for 3 days, I made about £80 or something like that, and I was crying. So what the thing with that is I should have got that in writing first before I started that job, just to cover myself, but always get it in writing. And then if you do get it in writing, attach it to your invoice, take a snapshot, put it onto your invoice, make sure that you're covering yourself.
Good advice.
Always find the answer, because the thing is, if you find the answer first, then next time you'll know what the answer is. So you're not just guessing again, you're not guessing. There's no reason to guess in this job. You can look stupid for one question on Gas Chat, but then at least you'll know the answer.
And you'll never forget it.
You'll never forget it.
If you've been made to feel stupid, you'll never forget asking that question. You'll never forget the answer you get. But yeah, make sure that you're keeping up to date with standards as they're coming out as well.
Any info on setting up hot water priority systems?
Ooh, it's a hot topic at the minute. Priority hot water.
It's a question that we sort of thinking we'll do a video on.
Yeah. So I like most engineers. Certainly because of my age as well. I don't remember when priority hot water was how we piped most systems in. I wasn't in the industry at that point. We seem to, since before I entered the industry, moved away and started moving towards Y plans and S plans. and then now it seems that we're sort of going back towards priority hot water. In my opinion, priority hot water is the way to go. It's the most efficient way to go if your boiler's compatible with it as well. However, it does seem to be quite a complicated subject.
So the way that we used to do it was, you could get boilers that had them built in, some old Worcesters 20 odd years ago, you could do that. But we used to just wire it on an S-plan as normal, Y plan, whatever. And then the hot water priority was tell customer to set the time clock an hour early for hot water.
Yeah.
And then when boiler comes on for heating, it's warm. The only flip side to that is now what we're trying to do low temperature central heating. And if we do low temperature, then we can't really do low temperature for the hot water cylinder.
That's why your boiler's got
so
to be
then
compatible.
if you do if you wire it slightly different, which we'll maybe do a video on, then you can have it so it's hot water priority, but you can have low temperature for heating and higher temperature for your hot water cylinder.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And the idea is that the reason why you don't want to be, your boiler's got to be priority hot water compatible is because if you stick a boiler that's not priority hot water compatible on, then there's a chance, well, it's not a chance, it will happen. You won't be, if you're sizing it to 50-degree flow, you need to have your cylinder at least 65 degrees anyway, or 60 degrees, sorry. So how does the boiler know unless it's compatible with it? So with the idea of a priority hot water compatible boiler is that it's got the capabilities of sending two different temperature flow rates out depending on what circuit's calling. So when the hot water priority kicks in, it'll send a higher flow temperature, 70 degrees maybe, to your cylinder, as opposed to 50 degrees, which will promote Legionella building up. Yeah.
I think that's it, innit?
Yeah, nothing else there, no.
Yeah, as I say, if anybody's got any questions, just put them in comments, and if anybody wants us to do this type of video again, if anybody's still watching.
Everyone's fixed off, everyone's gone.
Yeah, I think we've barred everybody now. Yeah, thanks for watching, and that's it.
Cheers, guys.